Welcome back to Brainy Bytes. Ready to absorb the knowledge that fuels top performers and makes you the sharpest mind in the room? They say the average CEO reads a book a week. Imagine having that power distilled for you. Stick with us for today's life-changing insights and hit subscribe and the bell so you never miss the wisdom to reach your peak potential. The Psychology of Money. Morgan Housel. Full summary. Why do incredibly smart people often make terrible decisions with money? Why is investing success sometimes so elusive even for those who understand the numbers? Housel's brilliant book, The Psychology of Money, argues that financial success has surprisingly little to do with how intelligent you are, and almost everything to do with how you behave. It's a captivating exploration of the timeless psychological truths that truly drive our financial lives. Introduction. Today we're diving into The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, a partner at the Collaborative Fund and former financial columnist. This book isn't about stock tips or complex financial strategies. Instead, it uses engaging stories and sharp insights presented in short, thematic chapters to reveal why our psychology, our biases, emotions, unique worldviews, and relationship with time is the most critical factor in building wealth and achieving financial well-being. Housel's core message is that doing well with money is less about what you know and more about how you behave. This summary will explore some of the most powerful psychological insights and behavioral principles from the book, grouped into key themes. Core insights. Understanding our financial behavior. Let's explore some of the key insights Housel shares about why we handle money the way we do. Theme Group 1. Your unique mindset matters. First, Housel emphasizes that no one's crazy. People make financial choices based on their own unique experiences, upbringing, and view of how the world works. What seems irrational to you might make perfect sense based on someone else's personal history with money, risk, and trust. This calls for empathy when observing others, and self-awareness about our own biases shaped by our limited experiences. Related to this is the idea that being reasonable is better than being rationally perfect. Striving for mathematically optimal financial decisions often fails because we're emotional humans. It's far more effective to aim for pretty good financial strategies that are reasonable for you and that you can actually stick with consistently over the long haul, even during periods of stress or temptation. Behavior trumps spreadsheets.
Brainy Bytes.
Finally, remember that you'll change. The person you are today won't have the exact same goals and desires as the person you'll be in 10 or 20 years. Therefore, avoid locking yourself into extremely rigid, long-term financial plans. Build flexibility and adaptability into your financial life to accommodate inevitable personal evolution. Theme Group 2. Embracing uncertainty and time. Housel powerfully argues for acknowledging the huge roles of luck and risk. Success is never solely due to hard work, and failure is never solely due to laziness. Random chance and unforeseen risks play a massive part in outcomes. This understanding fosters humility in success and compassion in failure, both for ourselves and others. Focus on what you can control, your effort, your savings, but respect the power of what you can't. He also highlights the concept of tails, you win. In many areas, especially investing, the vast majority of results come from a tiny percentage of events or investments, the long tails. Most things won't be huge winners, but a few outliers can make all the difference. This means accepting mediocrity in most efforts, but ensuring you're positioned, perhaps through diversification, to capture the benefits of those rare, huge wins. Compounding works wonders, but Housel notes the challenge of confounding compounding. While mathematically simple, the human mind struggles to intuitively grasp the exponential power of long-term growth. True wealth often comes not from chasing the highest returns, but from achieving pretty good returns sustained uninterrupted for the longest possible time. Patience and consistency are superpowers. Lastly, surprise. History is a guide to general patterns of human behavior around greed and fear, but it's a poor predictor of specific future events. The most impactful economic and market events are often things that have never happened before. Therefore, relying solely on past data is dangerous. Always expect the unexpected. Theme Group 3. What is wealth, really? A recurring theme is the danger of never enough. As income rises, people's desires often rise with it, leading them to move the goalposts constantly. This can result in taking on more risk or never feeling satisfied, regardless of how much wealth they accumulate. Defining what enough means for you, in terms of possessions and income, is crucial for happiness and avoiding disastrous decisions. So what should we aim for? Housel argues the highest form of wealth, the greatest dividend money provides, is freedom. It's the ability to control your own time, to do what you want, when you want, with whom you want, for as long as you want. This autonomy and flexibility are often far more valuable than luxury goods or status symbols. He illustrates this with the man in the car paradox. When we see someone driving an expensive car, we rarely think, wow, that person is cool. Instead, we tend to think, wow, if I had that car, people would think I'm cool. We use others' possessions as benchmarks for our own desires, forgetting that tangible displays of wealth rarely earn the admiration we crave. This leads to the insight that wealth is what you don't see. True wealth isn't the fancy car or big house. Those are just expenditures. Real wealth is the money not spent. It's the savings in the bank, the investments working for you, the financial assets providing flexibility, options, and that crucial element of freedom. Focus on building the unseen wealth. Theme Group 4. Behavioral strategies for success.
Brainy Bytes.
Housel distinguishes between getting wealthy versus staying wealthy. The skills required might differ. Getting wealthy can sometimes involve optimism, risk-taking, and finding an edge. Staying wealthy, however, is more about humility, fear, frugality, and consistently avoiding catastrophic mistakes. Survival over long periods is key for compounding to work its magic. A simple yet powerful behavior is to save money. Housel emphasizes the importance of a high savings rate, potentially independent of your income level or investment returns. Saving provides a buffer against inevitable surprises, reduces financial fragility, and directly increases your freedom and options. He even advocates saving without a specific goal. Just saving for saving's sake builds resilience. Finally, always build in room for error. Life rarely goes exactly according to plan. Markets crash, jobs are lost, unexpected expenses arise. Building a margin of safety into your finances through savings, avoiding excessive debt, and not needing optimal conditions for your plan to work is crucial for long-term survival and peace of mind. Avoid points of failure. Real-world application. Mastering your money psychology. How do we apply these psychological insights? The psychology of money suggests focusing on behavior. Number 1, know thyself. Understand your own relationship with money, your biases, your time frame, and what financial game you are playing. Don't blindly copy others. Number 2, define enough. Actively decide what level of wealth and consumption brings you genuine satisfaction and freedom, and resist the urge to constantly move the goalposts. Number 3, save consistently. Make saving a regular, significant habit, regardless of your income. Treat it as a non-negotiable buffer and creator of options. Number 4, embrace the long game. Be patient. Allow compounding to work. Focus on sustainable behaviors you can maintain for decades. Number 5, expect and plan for surprises. Build room for error into your plans. Avoid excessive debt or strategies that require perfection. Stay flexible. Number 6, prioritize freedom and control. Recognize that autonomy over your time is one of the most valuable assets money can buy. Aim for that above status symbols. I hope this exploration of Morgan Housel, The Psychology of Money, provides valuable insights into mastering your financial behavior. If it did, please show some love by hitting like and subscribe to join our Brainy Bytes community for more summaries on wealth, mindset, and decision-making. Want to help fuel future content like this? You can support the channel by buying me a coffee through the link below. It helps me dedicate more time to finding and summarizing these impactful books for you all. And speaking of impactful ideas, what book on finance, psychology, or decision-making should I tackle next? Let me know your suggestions in the comments. Your input drives the channel. Thanks for watching.